meta after the ban list tier list. Today, big dogs, we're going to be talking about the Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that deserve to be the new meta all the way down to... Give it up, lil bro. Hang up the cleats. The deck's just not good enough. It's not enough. Ban list hit your deck and it's not enough. Yeah, your deck ain't stepping, boy, it's not enough. Say you're bigger than yourself, but it's not enough. Let's go ahead and jump on in. What's going on with y'all, big dogs? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that your day phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. So the criteria is incredibly simple. We are going to be ranking these Yu-Gi-Oh strategies on how powerful they are to start the Yu-Gi-Oh format. Of course, as you guys should already know, the Yu-Gi-Oh format is always evolving. It's always changing and always getting stronger. This ban list was huge. And while these Yu-Gi-Oh strategies don't have any analytical data, I think it's crazy fun to go over these Yu-Gi-Oh strategies and talk about how powerful that I think I am. While I am, get it together, Callie. How powerful they are. It's also really cool to go back on these tier lists and see what I got right and I got wrong. Like the ban list, because I got a lot of things right. Let's go ahead and talk about Ryzeals as a pure Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Ryzeals actually did lose a lot. Losing all of your Ryzeal pieces does make the deck a lot less consistent, especially considering that Bonfire is also limited on the ban list. We also have to consider other factors like Crossout Designator and Triple Tactics talent being hit, as well as Bahamut Shark, your backup plan to insulate yourself from hand traps, also being hit on the ban list. I think despite all of this, that Ryzeal is still a contender as a pure Yu-Gi-Oh deck. One of the biggest hits is going to be Ryzeal Detonator, and with that particular hit, it's going to feel like, why play Ryzeal over a different Yu-Gi-Oh deck? This strategy is probably going to be reduced to using Ryzeal Plasma Hole to be able to make Baguska pass situations, which can still be effective, but I think that its ceiling is considerably lowered. Next, we're going to talk about Snake Eyes. Brother! Snake Eyes players remind me of that one guy with the girlfriend who everyone knows she's for the city, but they just don't seem to get the hint. Yes, getting both Snake Eyes Ash and Poplar off of the list to semi-limited is huge, but losing Bonfire is literally like trading in a leg, but losing your toes in the process. Especially considering that the original Sinful Spoils is still banned, this overall is a net L, and I would say Snake Eyes is a total deck. Give it up, lil bro. What I think is especially weird here is that you guys hated Snake Eyes. Now you get those players that hated Snake Eyes, all of a sudden they love Snake Eyes. It's easily one of the most interesting things. Branded. Branded is a strategy that probably will never lose momentum. It definitely did get better with the ban list with hits like Dimension Shifter and Abyss Dweller, but it didn't necessarily gain anything that would make it better. In fact, it did lose Triple Tactics talent, which allows you to be able to look for Ash if they just so happen to hand trap your other cards. To be honest, I really don't see a lot of movement for this deck. I still think that it's really strong, but I'm gonna put it into takes a good pilot. I think we're moving into a format where hand traps are going to be a lot more impactful. So if your deck can play more hand traps, you're probably at a benefit, and Branded doesn't really do that. Not to say that Branded can't win events. In fact, it can, but it takes a really good pilot since you don't have any more unfair cards. Next is gonna be Performapal. Get in monkey board. Just like how Yu-Gi-Oh players goon over Maliss P White Rabbit, Pendulum players have the biggest goon over banned Pendulum cards. The only problem with that is that the most important Pendulum card, Electromite, is still banned. Yeah, dog, Performapal isn't doing anything. Give it up, lil bro. Now, Mathmech was huge. If you guys remember the original one card combo Yu-Gi-Oh deck, play as many hand traps as you want to, it's Mathmech. I think that this is a little bit of fool's gold. Those big combo Yu-Gi-Oh decks are very powerful, but the huge drawback to those big combo Yu-Gi-Oh decks is that they no longer have the ability to play Crossout Designator, Triple Tactics talent, and Cold by the Grave, giving them 7 ways to interact with hand traps. Regardless, it is still a strong one card combo deck, and Mathmech is getting more support in Alliance Insight. It's also a Cybers deck that starts with MA, so it can't be worse than Mad Potential, right? I can see players playing Mathmech Circular in all of the wrong Yu-Gi-Oh strategies, and that would probably be a better use, but the pure version of the deck still has its charm. Next is Centurion! So there's like good things and bad things about Centurion. The good things: in a hand trap war, this is one of the better Yu-Gi-Oh strategies to play. The bad things: in a hand trap war, this is one of the strategies that get hit with hand traps and you look pretty stupid. Now, the reprieve here is that your Bestial cards did help you along, but with Bestial Druisworm being limited, that don't look as good. Not bad, still not as good though. Centurion can really keep up with some of the best decks in the game and play that hand trap war, but I don't think that it has enough unfair cards. I'm gonna put it in, takes a really good pilot. I think that Centurion simply just needs more ways to continue to play Yu-Gi-Oh! After being hand trapped, and that would probably bring up its ranking significantly. Now on to Voiceless Voice, and I think what's really interesting about Voiceless Voice is that it doesn't need its extra deck. We also know that, like I said before, Dweller, Dimension Shifter, and the Bestials are a little bit weaker. There's also the instance of Ryzeal Voiceless Voice. We did see that top a YCS. I think because of the current climate, Voiceless Voice actually has a ton of potential, and I think that it's really important that we might want to watch out for Eva being incorporated inside of the deck. I don't see the lines here, but I'm also not a Voiceless Voice player. I'm confident they can think of some foolery to make that card work for them. I think it has a ton of potential. True Draco. Hey, what's that when I said Masterpiece could come off the list and y'all say they can't? Where we at now? Unfortunately, the most important card for True Draco is still limited though. Dragonic Diagram is the most important card. I don't think one Masterpiece is going to help that, though this card can be used in a myriad of other decks. I'm gonna say give it up, lil bro. It is no longer 2017. Also, with cards like Summon Limit, Skill Drain, There Can Be Only One, Rival of the Warlords, and a host of other cards being limited, this card isn't as unfair as it used to be back in the days. Chimera is a deck that has been on my list for quite some time, and I'm not talking about the good list. The list that I'm talking about for Chimera is reminiscent to football players like Tavon Austin, DeAnthony Thomas, Jameis freaking Winston. You want them to be good. They have all of the intangibles, and from your perspective, they are put in the perfect situations to succeed. And then they disappoint you as much as going into a Hispanic household with a face tattoo. That's the best I'm giving you, dog. Chimera's innate problem is that other decks just do it better. If you want to play a Fiendsmith Azamina deck, well, White Force is probably your dog, and it's close to a contender. I'ma put it in that potential. The deck actually has the accolades of consistent tops, and one of its biggest beefs just hit the ban list. Dweller, Shifter, Bestials, hell, Nightmare Griffin, Bahamut Shark for summoning Totally Awesomes, Link Decoders to make decks faster. This is one of the better 2-card piece combo decks that can actually really play. Crystron doesn't have anything to lose. In fact, this deck was already topping and doing well at regionals and YCSs, and I think that it's going to be a solid contender. We just lost one of the most powerful negation monsters in Totally Awesome, but this deck can still make a powerful negation in Cyber Dragon Infinity, and not many other Yu-Gi-Oh strategies can put up Omni negations to be able to win the game. I want you guys to think of it as like Tenpai Dragon, except you actually have to have a brain to play it. I'm sorry, Tenpai Dragon players, don't shoot me, but I've seen enough Tenpai Dragon players to know. I think Fire King is in a really, really solid spot. This is a deck that 1000% just got stronger, easily mad potential. Also, with no hits to Chimera, it's going to be really interesting to see how the format is going to evolve. Bestial monsters are a little bit on the low side, and Chimera Fenrir is an excellent counter to one copy of Ryzeal Detonator. So is Chimera Unicorn too, so it's gonna be really, really crazy and exciting to see the response. Now, a lot of people would like to say that Maliss is hands down a tier 1 Yu-Gi-Oh deck, but I have my reservations. Throughout the entirety of last format, if I can remember correctly, Maliss has only won 1 YCS. In fact, it got its cheeks clapped by Fire King. I don't know. It's a deck that's gotten considerably weaker, and while it will be stronger in Alliance Insight, I think that Maliss is just a contender, and that may be crazy. Keep in mind, this particular tier list is the meta after the ban list, the Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that we're going to be dealing with in the right now. Of course, this will change when Alliance Insight comes out, but I don't think Maliss has enough power to be able to keep up with the top decks in the game right now. Decks like Memento, I mean, you've already seen what this deck has done. It's crazy how things have come full circle. I said that Memento was a top 5 Yu-Gi-Oh deck a couple of weeks ago. Statistically, it was on the rogue tier list because it's a rogue deck statistically. Then it turns around and wins a YCS. Looks like the mean team was actually doing the real gems. Memento is perfect in this Yu-Gi-Oh format because if we do progress to a hand trap like format, this deck is excellent at being able to play around them. It's also incredibly good against Exceed based Yu-Gi-Oh decks, which I don't think we'll stop seeing, and it has a lot of nuances that make it a really powerful deck. Now, Mermail's lost something really huge. We talked about it yesterday, how losing Bahamut Shark and Abyss Dweller is huge because it's going to affect your Dragoon lines to be able to search cards during your turn when you summon them to your side of the field. I think that Mermail is right now in a struggle bus, takes a really good pilot. Without having access to that Omni Negation in Totally Awesome, your going first boards are immediately weaker. And while I think that the deck could probably pivot to like a rank 7 deck, or even just pivot to like a rank 7 Synchro Yu-Gi-Oh deck, we can't deny that the deck has gotten considerably weaker considering that Bahamut Shark ban. It's huge. Now, I think that Fiendsmith Ryzeal is probably going to be the go-to Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Either you're playing that one, or you're playing the Mitsurugi Ryzeal. In case you guys didn't know, Mitsurugi is actually getting some insane Yu-Gi-Oh cards in Alliance Insight. They're really strong. And Mitsurugi Ryzeal was the forgotten version of Ryzeal simply because that deck wasn't as strong as the other competitors. I think the Mitsurugi version rears its head because King of Pharaoh Imps now can comfortably fit inside of the extra deck, as well as being able to use that Babushka, which will be a pivotal force in the game. If you ask me, I genuinely think that the Terribly Tired Taper should be banned, but that's probably for the next ban list. Tenpai Dragon, the turn your brain off an OTK deck. Tenpai Dragon reminds me of the guy that sits in the back of the class and you think is really smart, only to realize that he eats glue for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Again, I'm not saying that all Tenpai Dragon players are like this, but one thing that I think will be especially powerful with Tenpai Dragon is possibly the mix of engines with Chimera, because he can easily check the Ryzeal portion and possibly even the Fiendsmith line. That should be able to check the hand traps, and then you can just normal summon Hydra and go for game. This deck, I would love to say has mad potential, but this has already been accessible to Tenpai Dragon. I think that it's still going to take a really good pilot. It's going to take a non-glue eating Tenpai Dragon player to make sure that this deck is a threat. I do think that the budget version, the striker version of Tenpai Dragon is a crazy strong one. When we get to the higher levels of competition, it starts to struggle, especially now that hand traps are a little bit stronger. This Morphing Jar is going to represent Empty Jar. Now that Morphing Jar is at 2, Empty Jar is more viable. Yeah, you GOATS players, go ahead and hang that one up. This couldn't be the further from the worst Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that you can play in 2025. Brother, you're giving them cards in the graveyard and hand traps to stop you? Stop, just stop. I think Yubel is going to rise into the ranks. With the new cards banned, as well as Shavara going to 2, I think that it's one of the new metas. Funnily enough, the hits, the Crossout Designator, and Triple Tactics talents means that Phantom Yubel is a lot more valuable. Having a card that can built-in stop hand traps as you continue to combo means a little bit more now that the other cards no longer exist. Odion is a really tricky one. It got top 32 at YCS Houston, and I think the hits are actually favorable. I'm going to put it in contenders. I don't know who in a mama decided to call this deck Tomb Keepers, but until I see a Merrick and a Shizu and a Shadi card, I'm calling it Odion. I think that the Dominus cards are going to be pretty important, and this deck being able to technically search those cards is also going to be as equally important. And speaking of searching the Dominus cards, I forgot about Labrynth. There we go. I think that Labrynth is also a strategy that'll be a contender. It's going to be really hard to put it in the new meta, simply because I think that Ash Blossom will be powerful, but with more hand traps, players will probably start experimenting with Ghost Bell. It's pretty good against all of these strategies I just mentioned. So that may be a huge hindrance to Labrynth. Blue Eyes is easily one of the best decks in the game, bar none. It's simply gotten strong enough to be able to compete and is finally no longer Brick Eyes. It's consistent. Now this Bestial Lubellion stands for Dragon Link, who just got black and white dragons off the list. There's also some new additions with the Dark End Dragon that allows you to be able to fusion summon potentially into Borreload Furious Dragon, or making the very, very powerful Light and Darkness Dragon Fusion monster. Those are all cool, but I don't think it'll compete. I think it's going to take a really good pilot. The biggest thing that's working against dragons is that chaos space is simply limited. There are some other factors, but the chaos space being limited, that will probably take the cake for me. Not being able to have a reasonable access to cards like Bestial Lubellion, which is going to be one of the selling points of your deck, is really tough. Now, I genuinely want to put Unchained higher strictly because of Shavara. I personally do think that this deck has a lot of potential. Probably the best Triple Tactics Thrust deck because it allows you to get your trap cards, and also because of Shavara, it makes the combos a lot more fluid. This is secretly one of the best winners in the entire game. I think that this deck can be a lot stronger. The problem? Charmies, and that's going to have to get fixed somehow. Now, Dark Worlds did get more danger cards, but I don't think that's what Dark World needed. I think overall, Dark World needed more, I don't know, consistent Dark World cards without allowing you to goon in OTK. To be honest, this deck could probably be the strongest deck that we put down here because of how the ban list failed. But I don't think that it'd be strong enough to even consider it to be a little higher. Sharks literally got shafted, guys. I don't want to put it here, but yeah, not one of the strongest showings for this deck. I think one of the biggest things for Sharks was losing Bahamut Shark because it allowed you to go into your Exceed armor line with ease. Now you got to rely on Snow Dust Giant. Yeah, this is definitely one of those strategies that got hit the hardest and possibly is even dead before it even got to take off into the metagame. And lastly, it's Drytron. Drytron getting Eva. So look, I'm not gonna lie, I do want to put it here, but I don't see a single reason why it shouldn't be here. Probably easily the best deck. Now, I would love to be wrong about Drytron, but one of the biggest problems with Drytron now is that it has moved away from the fairy engine and closer to a machine deck. Eva could help, and it also could just be a brick in your hand. Probably going to need a little bit more time to figure that one out, but for right now, I would easily say that this is the deck with the biggest potential to get out of Give It Up, little bro. And that's all that I have for the meta after the ban list tier list. Of course, there's some strategies that I missed. I want you guys to let me know down below in the comment section about those strategies. And more importantly, make sure to check out these other videos so I can catch you on the next one.